Hello, my name is Walter Glover, and welcome to this Millrace Center e-learning. My subject concerns the coronavirus pandemic and grieving and mourning. This learning will be suitable for family members who have lost a loved one to death during the pandemic. It also will include useful information for many of us who are dealing with the uncertainties that we face that are caused by the pandemic and the grief and the mourning because of significant disruption in our lives. So by way of introduction, I volunteered at Millrace Center for 4 years with Jennifer Lowry to facilitate grief education in a monthly grief group setting at Millrace for those 4 years. I also volunteer at our hospice of Southern Indiana here in Columbus as in the same role as a grief educator for a weekly grief group. I've done the hospice piece for 5.5 years with Bob Calvert of the hospice staff. And for the last 18 years here in Columbus, I've facilitated and supported Wings for the Journey, which is a grief group for bereft parents who have lost a child or children. I'm certified as a grief educator, counselor with the Center for Loss and Life Transitions at Fort Collins, Colorado. I'll tell you a little bit about Alan Wolfelt, PhD, and Dr. Wolfelt's work I will largely rely on today, as well as my experience as a grief educator and counselor. And the Center for Loss and Life Transitions is directed by my mentor and friend, Dr. Wolfelt. And the material I present is, like I say, is going to rely largely on that. And here's the thing. Name something that you care about or that gives your life meaning. In all likelihood, and that in some cases may be the very death of a family member, a friend to the coronavirus. In other situations, in all likelihood, wherever you are in your life, think of something that gives your life meaning, that gives your life purpose. And then think about that connection. In all likelihood, it is affected or threatened in some way by the coronavirus. And no wonder, the virus threatens every single person on earth with losses of every kind. Separation from loved ones, financial endangerment, canceled once-in-a-lifetime events, graduations, proms, and many, many more things. And for those who have lost a loved one to death, certainly my prayers and condolence. And you found that funeral rituals have been disrupted. And does that shakeout from coronavirus, does it cause you to worry? What will happen next? Will I get sick? Will we get sick? Will people we care about get sick? Will people we love die? And as I say, for some of you, that's been the case. I know that, I know of confirmed cases, perhaps you do as well, and maybe you've experienced the loss of a loved one. Let's say some things about grief generally. And grief is all the emotions that you feel when your attachments are threatened, are harmed, are severed. We may and likely do experience shock, disbelief. We become sad, possibly lonely. We might get angry. We might feel guilty, regretful, And the sum total of all those and any other thoughts and feelings we have that we're experiencing because of the coronavirus is a part of our grief. It's caused great disruption, great dysfunction, and a lot of people are anxious about the future, and many don't perform well amid uncertainty. And for people that like to be in control, that's a particular issue. Our anxiety all about the future unknowns becomes a part of our grief. Control people, and that may include some of you that are listening, like things when they're black and or white. They don't embrace gray or ambiguity or mystery well. Control people like to anticipate, to prepare for what's to come. And that's exactly where we are not right now. So grieving reflects two N words: normal and necessary. Grief is normal and it is necessary. Grief is the price we pay for having love. And the more deeply we love someone or are attached to something, the more profound and the deep our grief will be. Our woundedness is a word that Dr. Wolfelt uses. His body of work has been around for 40 years. That's how long he's been in grief counseling. And it's predicated on understanding that it is essential that everyone can and should work toward understanding our grief. Our grief is what's inside of us. Think of your body, of your mind as a container and a vessel, and grief's on the inside. And unless you mourn, which is your grief gone public, it's passive, it's inert. Unexpressed grief can and will be toxic. Watch my hands for this illustration. If my right hand is me and my left hand is my grief, in the grief groups, as a grief educator, I teach people to embrace their grief, because that's where the healing is between you and embracing it, or another word is integrating it in your life. And if you don't do that, this is you, and you walk away or run away from your grief, it will bound after you and bite you in the butt to be served. When Jennifer Lowry and I we're down at Mill Race, or Bob Calvert and I teach in our grief group at hospice, we find ways to help you express your grief outside of yourself. You're mourning, and when you do that, the grief changes. It becomes active, and that is when grief becomes mourning. Maybe you've heard the gospel verse about blessed are those who mourn. And the way I do this in the grief groups is ask where my theologians are, and I quote this out of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 2. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be. I put my hand up to my ear, and some people know the answer. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. If you don't mourn, well, Scripture doesn't address that. It does say, like a beatitudinal promise, that it is, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. A fundamental of Allen's teaching is that death doesn't end a relationship. Rather, it becomes a relationship of memory. And Dr. Wolfelt's body of work is undergirded by that. It's also undergirded by 6 central needs of mourning, which I'm going to touch on. And those 6 central needs of mourning, again, this is 40 years of grief work. This is 40 books, a private clinical practice. Dr. Wolfelt is considered the guru in North America about grief, death, grief, loss, and mourning. He's presented nationally and internationally. Undergirding all of that work are these 6 central needs of mourning. Acknowledge the reality of the death, or for some of you, acknowledge the reality of the pandemic, the coronavirus. Honor, second central need, all your feelings. Practice gratitude. Be kind, be gentle with yourself. Fifth one, search for meaning. And the last one is reach out others to accept help. And Alan modifies that for the coronavirus, reach out others to accept help and to give support, because you can be one of the most important people for others, believing in hope. And when we talk about hope in the grief group, we do it as like an acrostic poem. Think of the H in hope. Hang, O, on, P, pain, E, eases. Hang on, pain eases. This will get better. Lynn St. James was the second woman to drive in the Indianapolis 500. She'd talk about her car owner, Derek Stewart, and say, his philosophy was, if the glass had a drop of water in it, the glass was half full. This will end. Things will change somewhat. We don't know exactly what that is, but hope is only hope when you don't exactly know what the future holds, but you believe that it will get better. And that's part of acknowledging the pandemic of grief. Alan stresses, be accurately informed, practice wellness, use the measures that you should be taking to keep yourself and others as safe as possible. Acknowledge the reality of the grief about the pandemic. Don't put your blinders on. Don't cover up your ears. You don't have to read and listen to all the news, but accept the reality of it. A lot of people denied its existence in the future, and that may have hurt some countries' responses to it. Step 2, second central need of mourning. Honor all your feelings. Shock, disbelief, anxiety, sadness, loneliness, anger, guilt, regret. Those are some of the things that you could be experiencing. And again, in the grief group, I try and teach people to name the feelings that they're experiencing, and then to express those to a non-judgmental listener, to someone you trust that won't poo-poo what you're talking about, will acknowledge it and listen to you. You'll find, and here's the key of this, that fully and honestly expressing all of your feelings will provide you with comfort and relief. You've heard the expression of getting things, perhaps you've heard the expression of getting things off your chest. That's what you're doing. You're dumping some of the toxic garbage when you acknowledge it. Third central need of mourning. Practice gratitude for the good in your life. I take off the glasses I'm wearing. I set them down. I pick up a second pair of glasses. I put them on, and these glasses are my glasses of gratitude. All of a sudden, like Lynn St. James and her car owner, I start seeing the glass half full, no matter how much water is in the glass. It's being grateful. It's being thankful for the blessings that you have and enumerating them. There's a great book called Attitude of Gratitude. I think it's available still at the the local library. If you're experiencing when you're in sheltering at home, you can keep a gratitude journal. You don't have to have a bound book. I mean, that's nice if you've got access to one of those, but write down at the end of the day, for example, 3 things that you're grateful for. Again, this gratitude contours and shapes our response to the coronavirus. So practice gratitude. Say thank you. Maybe write people letters. I have a friend, Nancy, who, as a Lenten practice, was writing a letter a week to someone to express gratitude, to praise them, affirm them, support them. And she's upped that to 2 and 3 letters a week now to people during this coronavirus. That will foster hope in you for what will be. The 4th one is to be kind to yourself. Make a commitment to take care of yourself physically, cognitively, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. Those people that know me, I'm not a great tech person, but and I have a group of fellas that come over every Wednesday night. We're still meeting on Wednesday night, but not at my house. We're meeting in a video conference. I'm friends with 6 other guys from Indiana University era back 100 years ago in my life. And we will video conference this afternoon. I'm doing a Bible study that way as well. And that's not something I typically do. Take yourself for a walk. I love doing that. Those of you that know me know that I was a mountain climber, a trekker. I love being out in nature and walking. But do take care of yourself. And Alan says, Dr. Wolfelt says, 10 to 15 minutes every day spiritually is an important thing. Maybe spiritually for you is being out in nature. For some, it's reading the Bible. For some, it's praying. For other people, it might be listening to a certain kind of music. But again, in terms of taking care of yourself, it's at St. Vincent, we called it body. I was pastoral care hospital chaplain for St. Vincent hospitals for the last 15 years of my career. And the St. Vincent doves, it's 3 doves flying in formation, and the doves represented body, mind, and spirit. And they're in formation because the idea with the St. Vincent logo was body, mind, and spirit needed to be in balance. Search for meaning. Alan talks about liminal space. Liminal space is the space in between. And you know where you came from. You're not sure exactly how you're going to come out of it. And you're right in the middle of it. It's the betwixt, the between. And for many people, that can be an uncomfortable place. When you're searching for meaning, caring for your spirit is really what that is about. And it can feel like a weird pause, especially those of you who, as I say, are control people. Being in liminal space betwixt and between, let it be a creative opportunity for you as you deal with the coronavirus, as you mourn the loss of people during this period of time. The last one, and we'll summarize, is to reach out to others, to give support and to accept support. I mentioned video conference calls. Voice phone calls are a good thing as well if you have trouble with Zoom or Duo on Google. Voice calls, text, a personal letter, writing a personal letter and mailing it to somebody People get so much junk mail, they love to get a letter, and from someone they love, a handwritten letter, good penmanship, please, would be an important thing. And to be model open and honest communication about whatever it is you're feeling or struggling, because your candor will encourage others to be honest as well. There's a book, Timeless Healing, by Herbert Benson, who's the medical director at the Harvard Body Mind Institute, a Jewish physician. And Dr. Benson, whom I know, talks about we're wired to love and we are wired to be loved. So it's not just taking care of you, but it's reaching out and helping take care of others as well. These 6 central needs of mourning can improve your self-awareness. They can foster mindfulness, build relationships, and these qualities will all serve you well toward being an integrated person in your life. About uncertainty, there's a Pema Chodron, P-E-M-A-C-H-O-D-R-O-N. Pema Chodron wrote a book called Comfortable with Uncertainty. I know for some of you, being comfortable with uncertainty sounds weird, it sounds incongruent, it sounds crazy, but life is uncertainty. Oftentimes, we want the things we want and we don't get them. Other times, we don't want certain things and we end up getting those. And it can be very unsettling, disruptive, dysfunctional. But again, what this does is help you. Quarantino, as we finish up now, Quarantino has to do, that word is the root word of quarantine. It's an Italian word. It came up back in the 1300s when ships were quarantined in Venice for 40 days. And there again would have been a lot of uncertainty. But if you look at this with this circumstance with a mindfulness, it can be helpful. Jewish proverb, time is just time. We teach in the grief groups, unless you really do the grief work. If you expect time to do the grief work, again, it will bite you in the butt, because time is just time. It's not going to do the healing. Last thing I'll tell you is what we do in the grief group before we close every time, and it's the words, I will survive. I'm sure you've heard that expression in music. And what I do is I ask people, invite people to say those words. And I do it with a ring tap like this. I tap 3 times, and the 3rd time, they know what to do. They say, I will survive. I'm going to do that now, and I'd like you to say that at home. I will survive. And what this does, it sets your intention to heal. You can say something else if it works for you, but set your intention to heal. So that concludes what I have today. I hope all of this was helpful to you. God bless you. Good day.